Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Safe Travels podcast. My name is Joey. Today I'm at North Cascades National Park, and this morning I sat down with Park Ranger Anna Vornholt. We talked about bears, bear safety, and the wildlife here at the North Cascades. All right, Anna, welcome back.
Thanks.
This is an exciting episode because recently a record of decision has been made to reintroduce the grizzly bear in the future. So I want to talk about the difference between a grizzly bear and a black bear, which already exists within the park. I think sometimes people, when they see a bear, they might get confused on what type of bear that they're looking at. So what are the main differences between those two bears?
Yeah, I think if you see a bear when you're out in bear country, we think, oh, black bears are always going to be black. They're not always. They can be a range of colors from blonde to cinnamon brown to chestnut brown to black. So color is not really a good indicator of what type of bear that you're seeing. So grizzly bears do have kind of big humps on their shoulders. They've got really powerful shoulders that they use when they're digging around in the soil and getting food that way. So that's a good sign. Grizzly bears have much longer claws, again, because they kind of shovel up the dirt and get lots of insects and bulbs and things that way that they're eating. So they've got these long claws, while black bears tend to have shorter curved claws that are really going to help them when they're climbing trees. I mean, hopefully you're not ever close enough that you can see the claw length, and that's the way you're telling the difference. But that's a pretty big difference between them.
What about the differences in their facial structure?
Yeah, so black bears tend to have bigger, longer ears, and they kind of have that sloped face, versus grizzly bears will have short, rounded ears and kind of that scoop on their nose. So slightly different face shapes for them.
And, for people who have encountered a bear, whether it be in North Cascades or another park, what are the mannerisms that are different between the two animals? And should you react differently if you see a grizzly bear versus a black bear?
Yeah, that's a good question. In my experience, when I've seen bears, they generally act pretty much the same way. Bears in general want nothing to do with people, and they want to avoid people. So most of the time when I've seen a black bear, or when I've worked in other parks where there have been grizzly bears, the bears either ignore me or they run away. So I think when people are recreating in bear country, the most important thing to do when you see a bear is to just be aware of your surroundings and watch what the bear is doing. Give it space. If it continues on its way, great. If it stays where it is, then how can you change your plan so you maybe go back the way you came or walk a different way around on the trail? Be really calm for both of these. Don't run away. You never want to run. Back up, give the bear space, potentially, talk out loud to it in a calm voice. I think both of those things I would do for either a black bear or a grizzly bear.
And you mentioned the steps you should take if you do see a bear. Is there anything that you can do preemptively to mark your location for a bear so they know where you are, so maybe they don't get, scared or react reactively when they see you?
Yeah, I think being aware of your surroundings is really important. So making sure that you're not just so focused on the hike that you're doing and staring at, the trail in front of you that you don't notice the things that are happening around you. Mm-hmm. If I'm ever hiking in an area that's thickly forested or has a lot of vegetation and I can't see what's around the corner on the trail, then presumably what's on the trail around the corner might not be able to see me either. So one thing that you can do is use your voice, call out, "Hey bear," or whatever you'd like to say, and just make sure that you're making noise as you're going through. You can also hike in a group. Generally, if you're hiking in a group of humans is going to make more noise than someone on their own. So that's great. If you're hiking with a dog, which here in the recreation areas, you're allowed to take your dog on our trails as long as it's on a leash, but make sure that you actually keep it on a leash when you're out there.
I know some people who like to sing on the trails.
Yeah, you can sing too. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite song to sing on the trail?
That's a secret. Only if I'm hiking by myself, then I'll sing. But
what about equipment that people can take out there? I know there's a lot of talk about bear bells. That's a way where you're always making noise, regardless if you're talking or singing. Obviously, you can have bear spray on you. Mm-hmm. Is that permitted within the park?
Yeah, so bear spray is permitted. It's kind of up to you if you want to carry that. So definitely if you have bear spray, it's important to know actually how to use it, how to pull that safety off and spray it. Another important thing to think about with bear spray is if you need your bear spray and it's buried in your pack, that's not very helpful. So if you are carrying it, making sure that it's somewhere on your belt or on your pack that you can grab it really quickly. The idea of bear spray is that It's this really strong pepper spray that can create almost like a wall of pepper between you and the bear. And it's not something that you see a bear on the trail and it's eating berries and you're just spraying bear spray at it. It's really kind of a last resort if a bear is approaching you in a threatening way that you would use to make that like wall of pepper.
You described it perfectly, but it's important for people to know it's not something you spray yourself with
No,
before going
don't do
out. You don't mark your campground with it.
No.
As you mentioned, it's a last precaution. What about bear bells? Is there any real science behind it in helping avoid bears?
You know, I've seen conflicting things in articles and studies about bear bells. Just anecdotally, I've before been hiking on a trail where I saw someone coming towards me and I couldn't actually hear that they had a bear bell until they were about 30 feet in front of me. So I think bear bells can be effective. They are making noise, but I don't think that should be the only way that you're making noise. You know, human voices carry really well and there's nothing else that really sounds like them. So that's, I think, one of the more effective ways to make noise is by singing out or calling out.
I think you make a good point too. Because I've read stuff that says, bears don't necessarily think of a bear bell and think of a human being, but when they hear your voice or when you're singing, they equate it to us when they don't want to be around us, as you mentioned. Have you heard or seen anything similar to that, bears are listening for sounds that they can equate to certain things, and a bear bell might be a bit confusing for them on what it is?
Yeah, and I think bears are generally pretty curious. And so if they hear something weird or see something, they might investigate that. So I think, like you said, having your voice is really the best way to let them know that you're there. And then most of the time, they're going to try to avoid you.
Campgrounds are really important, especially for, in all honesty, keeping the bears alive and keeping them wild. Yeah. What are steps people need to take to make sure that their campground is utilized appropriately to keep the bears safe?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things you can do is make sure that you're storing all of your food away properly when you're not using it. So here in our drive-in campgrounds, they all have what we call bear boxes. So these big metal lockers that are bear proof. Only a human can stick their hand in there and open it. So it's really important to store all food, coolers, fuel, candles, anything that could have a scent inside one of those bear boxes. The idea is if a bear does walk through the campground, because we are in their habitat, that they wouldn't find any food rewards. There's no reason to stick around. They're just going to pass through. We don't want them to find, a cooler with hot dogs or anything, and they get that reward. So the same thing if you are backcountry camping, if you're out in the wilderness, it's important to make sure that you're storing your food properly. And in the wilderness, that might be a little bit different depending on where you are, using potentially a bear canister, which is kind of a plastic container that, again, is bear proof. It has a certain way that you open it. Potentially hanging your food. There's certain parameters for that depending on where you are. Would be another option.
Do bears get into cars in this park? Are they curious enough to try and open up car doors?
They haven't really done that yet. So I know there are some other areas where they might be able to rip car doors off, but that's not something we've seen here. So definitely people can store anything that has scent that could be an attractant inside of their cars as well. Hard-sided vehicles, yeah.
We talked about how to keep your campsite clean, but why is it important? And what kind of damage does it do beyond just giving the bears a reward? What's the life cycle after that look like for a bear?
Yeah, so after a bear gets food, bears need so many calories every day to survive, and they can get what they need from the forest and from the habitat they're in. But if they're able to get a bunch of food really easily just by walking into a campsite, they're also really smart and they're going to learn that behavior and they're going to keep doing it. So the concern is once a bear gets food, that it could potentially keep approaching people, keep coming back to the campgrounds, and could become dangerous over time. So we say, a fed bear is a dead bear, because ultimately, if a bear gets food and becomes a threat to people, that's not going to end well for the bear.
There's been stories of bears that experience that and they get relocated within a park, and their scent and, as you mentioned, their knowledge is so good that they can come back to that same exact campground. Is that something that the park is able to track, and are there rangers monitoring bears that get into those situations?
I mean, we have biologists that work here in the park, and we also work with Washington State rangers to help with some of our bear management. What I've been told from bear biologists is that relocation is not really effective. Like you said, they could potentially travel back. It's really hard to take them someplace and for them to be successful in another area. So we do in the park hopefully we can keep clean campsites, and then the bears aren't going to get those rewards and kind of stop the problem through education at the beginning. Beyond that, there's certain, hazing that can be done by people that are trained to do that. So that could be yelling at the bear, potentially throwing little rocks to hit the ground near the bear and kind of scare it away. Basically, if a bear is in a campground consistently, we want to make that as unpleasant an experience as possible so that they learn to leave that area and avoid it. So that's kind of the next step. Unfortunately, if bears still are coming back and become a dangerous threat beyond that, that could be fatal for the bear over time. Yeah.
We talked in the last episode about geology, the glaciers, the mountains, the forests. What areas of the park are these bears usually lingering at, and where are the healthiest parts of the park for them to survive?
Yeah, so we have a really healthy population of black bears here, and they're kind of all over. So they are omnivores, and they're going to go where they can get food. So earlier in the season, that might be where, lower down where they're getting fresh grasses that are coming up. As snow melts out of the subalpine and we get the huckleberries that grow up there, they're also going to move up into those areas and get food there. So they really can move quite a ways. They're very motivated by food and where the fresh berries are, which I guess I am too when I hike, so can't blame them.
This part to me was really interesting. Reading about the bears, especially in this park, is you just mentioned they get berries, but after they get the berries and digest it, their scat then replants those seeds back into the forest and regrows those plants. So not only is the ecosystem providing them with support, but they're also providing that same support back into it, which is really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool to think about how really everything is so connected and how these species are really important in the ecosystem here.
There's, as you mentioned, a healthy bear population, but there's a lot of healthy species within the park, including the Wolverine, which is fascinating to learn about.
Cool.
And I know talking to you and other rangers here, it's a dream for a lot of you to see a Wolverine here. What is a Wolverine? What makes them unique to this park?
Yeah, a Wolverine, they're in the mustelid family. So they're essentially a type of weasel that could get maybe 50 to 60 pounds. And they're pretty elusive. They live in the most extreme environments up in the mountains, and they travel and they have huge ranges. So I think they really, to me, kind of encapsulate the wild nature of the mountains and the wild nature of North Cascades in one animal that's just living its life up in those mountains. So I think that's why we all get really excited about them.
What other animals exist within the park, and maybe what are some animals that a visitor might see that might not be as elusive as other ones?
Yeah, so in the area that we're in here, so kind of in this forested area, really common wildlife to see would be mule deer. We have lots of deer here. We have lots and lots of birds, and this time of year we get a bunch that are kind of migrating through, and we have lots of bald eagles as well that like to hang out along the Skagit River. Also in this forest, it's the habitat of the banana slug, which is a really cool slug that's a yellowish color usually with brown spots, so it's its name, the banana slug. So those are all really common here in the forest. If you go up into the mountains, some of the animals you see might be the mountain goats that live up there. We have hoary marmots, which are essentially large, I believe they're in the rodent family that live in the subalpine. We also have pica that live up there. Have you heard of pica before?
I have.
Yeah.
I saw one at Diablo at the Overlook.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, they're so cute.
They are.
They're actually in the rabbit family, but they're these adorable little animals. They're like the size of a potato, I would say, with curved ears that live, they like scree fields, so rocky areas, usually above tree line.
That's so cool. The marmot is what I really wanted to see here. They're also so cute looking.
Yeah, they are really cute. I sometimes think that marmots have maybe like the best life of any animal that's here. They hibernate like 8 months out of the year. And then when I see them, they're always just napping in the sun or frolicking through the flowers. I'm like, it's pretty nice.
You bring up a good point, actually, hibernation. When going back to bears for a second, when bears come out of hibernation, is there a particular time they're more dangerous or maybe aggressive or protective, especially if they have cubs?
I haven't heard that there was a particular time where they'd be more aggressive, but you have to think that when they're coming out of hibernation, they, have gone through all of that and they've lost all of their calories and they really need to eat and to grow. So those are times when we just want to be even more sensitive to them and making sure that we're giving them space and not stressing them out more.
Bald eagles obviously are a really fascinating animal for a lot of people. You mentioned that they're usually around the Skagit River. How frequent can you see them? Are they out and about and you can see them pretty regularly within the park?
Yeah, they are out and about all year. We do see them quite a bit more in the winter and into the spring when we've got lots of salmon and fish that are in the river. So they're really common. Not necessarily as much in the summer, but that being said, I saw one yesterday. So,
oh, really?
Anywhere that you're around water, especially, is a good place to look for bald eagles. They tend to perch kind of at the tops of trees, and you can see that distinctive white head when they're perched there.
What other birds are in the park?
We have hundreds of species of birds that live here. We do have peregrine falcons that nest in the park. We've got, in forests like this, lots of really cool woodpeckers that live here, including the pileated woodpecker, which is huge. And usually you'll hear them more than you'll see them because you hear that very, very loud, like knocking noise. We have all sorts of songbirds that pass through. I just saw a western tanager that migrated through the area recently. So they're beautiful colored birds.
That's awesome. Yeah. Speed limit is oftentimes very important in national parks everywhere, but in national parks, especially because of wildlife, is wildlife crossing within the streets. Does it happen often?
I wouldn't say it happens a ton here that we're concerned about it. I mean, we really only have the one road, State Route 20, that cuts through the park. So there's a lot of just area wilderness that wildlife can live in that they're not being impacted by cars, which is great. But that highway that cuts through does have a high speed limit in a lot of areas. So it's really important when people are driving through to make sure that they're watching for especially deer, and bears are probably the most common to see along the road.
Did you have any other wildlife fun facts that are on top of mind that you'd like to share?
So just because we were talking about the bald eagle, so we do have all 5 types of Pacific salmon that spawn here, which is really special that we have each of those species.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Is it the bald eagle the only one that utilizes the salmon in their diet?
I'm sure there are many other animals. Bears potentially could eat some salmon, even though our bears here, according to our biologists, are more bug and berry bears. So they're really getting stuff from the forest. We have a lot of people that actually come to fish as well. So humans that like to fish in the area. I think one cool thing about salmon is even if they're not directly feeding something that's eating them, when they come up here to spawn, then they die and they decompose, and the nutrients from their bodies that they're bringing from the ocean is getting back into the ecosystem here through the rivers and into the forest. So it's, again, kind of like we were talking about with the bears and the berries. It's this circle that everything's connected.
Awesome. Well, Anna, thank you for this. This has been great.
It's been fun.
Thanks for checking out this edition of the Safe Travels podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it. Anna is so great to talk to, and I really hope you were able to learn some things about bears and how to keep them safe and how to keep yourself safe when visiting the North Cascades. So if you like this type of content, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching from, as it really does help out our channel. So until next time, safe travels.